So following on from the last video, we had, our four patterns, sorry, at the top of the number with that explained how the number grew. And then, in case A and case B here, we added 2 digits. In case C, we added a single digit. And in case D, we added 2 digits as well. And I wanted to talk about why this is actually really bad news for numbers growing, right? Because we recall our 101 pattern, right? And so if we consider a number like starting with 10 and 01, in the particular case where there is no carry because of the pattern in here, so that we don't have a carry when we triple the number, right, for this, I know immediately that this number, so with no carry, any class of number with this pattern and no carry, so it's not case D, but it's case C, will collapse to 421 under the Collatz conjecture. There's a bunch of complicated math, but very basically, if any number under the Collatz conjecture is less than its initial seed value, then there's a proof elsewhere that shows that the whole thing has to go to 421. So, I've really broadened my class of odd numbers that can fit in here. And you can also put some stringent constraints on the others, right? So, here you're adding 2 digits, right? And so if there is a carry, for any of those cases, if you have a number of the form 101, right, as the lowest digits, it doesn't matter what happens with these, right? But for any number of these two forms, you know that it'll collapse to the Collatz conjecture, right? So, or it'll collapse to that 421 cycle, because here I'm removing 3 digits, and here I'm only adding 2, right? So net -1 digit, and by that proof by some other smart dude, you know that it has to reduce to 421. So here I've found 2 infinite classes that are really broad, where any number of these forms will collapse to 421. So what you're really left with, right? Like, you have a pattern at the start where you can have, any number that doesn't collapse under the conjecture, right, has to start with 1 and 1, right? It's the only way you can get a number that immediately doesn't collapse under the conjecture. And so, you can have 1, 0, and then some other things where you don't have a carry, but this is much more constrained, right? So depending on what's going on in here, this one may or may not collapse. This type of number may or may not collapse. And this number won't collapse right away. You don't know what'll happen, right? So, I think at this point you're looking at it and you're like, well, so I keep finding more constraints about how these numbers can grow and what they can go on. And so, Alex Kontorovich was saying, well, people have been trying for years to prove this thing. There's that stuff by John Conway, where he shows that lots of problems like this are sort of formally undecidable, I think, or unprovable. But in this case, it really seems to me like it's riding on the knife's edge of not possible. Because, here you've got all of these numbers that are immediately going to fall to pieces. And then you've got these 2 sort of constraints here that aren't great. So I think, looking at these, you're sort of going to wonder, well, what predictions can I make based on this knowledge? And how can I show, do any of these cases turn into other cases? Like, initially, early on, I showed that, numbers, even numbers that aren't powers of 2 become odd numbers under the Collatz conjecture. So you only have to look at odd numbers for the Collatz conjecture. And so you wonder, well, like, what happens here, right? Do these numbers become some of these numbers? Excuse me. And are they linked in some way? Is there some possible way to show that they're linked?